Week 2 is here. We help you avoid those landmines when it comes to setting your fantasy football lineups. This and more on today's In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
Cause I've been in tune, out of touch, coming off the bench, trying to shake the funk, check your stat line, see who's up, that over under hit too clutch.
And I'm trying to avoid getting carried away with the jet sweep, sleeping on a trick play, predicting all of my moves like they seen every play. And so I'm running it back, head down, get out of my way. And it's for the law with only one thing to do. I guess I'll say a prayer and put it all on the line for you. What they don't know, something they haven't seen. I find a gap on the screen and hit them right in between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it.
Just one thing to say, yeah, what they don't know, something they haven't seen. I'm off that mean Joe Green, it got me fading between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it. The In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is Feel Good Friday, September 15th, and it is only week 2 of the NFL season, but I feel like we're already balls deep in this son of a bitch because so many injuries are happening. We're having to make pivots left and right, and I feel like I've just been staring at projections, prop totals for days now. Haven't shaved in those couple days as well, but we fucking love it, and we hope you guys do as well. My name is Seth Woolcock, and today I'm joined by my friend who enjoys big old trucks, big old dips in the lip, and big old fantasy football totals. He's known as Tex. Give it up for Eric Romoff. What's up, Eric? How we doing tonight, buddy?
Man, we got a inverted version of Two Truths and a Lie. But I'm doing good, right? That last night was the rare Thursday night football game that actually ran up the score and was exciting all the way down to the stretch run. So great way to kick off week number 2. There are plenty of teams of mine that have like a 40 or 50 or 60 point edge on my opponent this week. There are a couple other teams where I'm in a pretty deep hole, right? So definitely a bang of a way to start week 2, and I can't wait to dive into the rest of the slate.
100% agree with you. We are jam-packed here on the show once again for our Friday special. Thursday night football recap coming at you, ladies and gentlemen, in just a couple moments. We also have Sam Wagman, who's joining the show for some start sits right around the 2:15 hour. And then Sure Thing Sleepers of the Week. We have a new friend joining us, Brian Ford, today. Excited to chat with him. And we got to redeem ourselves a little bit, Eric. One of our Sure Things didn't even play last week, and the other one dropped a big old not a donut, but damn close to it in your tight end spot. So we're going to help you guys out here on this Friday. Want to thank the IBT family for riding along with us today. Looks like we already have some people in the chat, some faithfuls. Albert, good afternoon, IBT. Good afternoon to you, Albert. Thanks for joining us. And Toronto Dave, he's always here for the feel good vibes. We appreciate you, Dave, riding alongside us. Eric, let's look back at last night. As you said, one of the rare good Thursday night football matchups.
Temperature check.
That's really spicy. Holy shit.
All right, so hot, and that was last night's game as well. Eagles, they take the Vikings 34-28. 700 total yards of offense in this one, Eric. 4 turnovers for the Vikings and nearly 40 minutes of time of possession for the Philadelphia Eagles. Minnesota now falls to 0-2. There are Kirk Cousins to the Jet rumors already. Thoughts on the game before we dive into the fantasy aspect of it?
Man, this was an absolute roller coaster, right? Like, the first half of this game was pure, unadulterated underporn. Like, just all the turnovers. Every time someone was about to score, it seems like they would cough it up. It seemed like we were cruising to an under. And then these teams made a couple of adjustments at the half and came out slinging in the third quarter. So definitely a ton of fun to watch. And look, I think the overarching point is there were a lot of people dunking on Kirk Cousins and his primetime record. Obviously, he didn't get the win this one, but I mean, he played much more like we're accustomed to Kirk Cousins playing, at least in 1 o'clock games. So seems like he might have gotten that monkey off of his back, if nothing else.
100% agree with you there. Let's talk about some of the fantasy aspects. And here in this segment, we like to break things down a little bit differently. We're going to go on our scale, kind of like a steak here. Rare is you're believing in it. Medium is you're okay with this player moving forward. And well done, you're trying to sell. You want out of it. Let's talk about the king of the night, Philadelphia's own DeAndre Swift, 28 for 175 and 1 on the ground. And I'm just going to say, Eric, I got fucked over so bad by this happening last night.
No.
Not only do I have Kenneth Gainwell in most of my leagues, I have him in my big time money league. He was out. I had to sit him, and my opponent had DeAndre Swift. So I got double punched in the face last night. O-line looked great. Swift looked as explosive as he maybe ever has. And also 28 carries for a guy who the Lions weren't even giving 12 to 14 just a year ago.
Yeah, you were scaring me there because I thought you were going to say you were one of the people that dropped DeAndre Swift.
Oh.
He was one of the most dropped people across the vast majority of commissioner platforms. So if nothing else, you're not in that company. But yeah, I mean, this was the DeAndre Swift party. I have been one of the sad sacks out there that has just been begging for a team to give DeAndre Swift a full workload. And at least here in week 2, we saw, what he can do with that. 28 for 175, caught 3 passes out of the backfield as well, and did the absolute most with the opportunity that he was given. I don't think this is necessarily a sign of things to come, right? Like Philadelphia, for as long as we can remember, has really been deploying a pretty heavy committee in their backfields. Yes, I think DeAndre Swift has earned additional opportunity based on how he played tonight. But it's not like they're just going to completely cast aside Kenneth Gainwell. Boston Scott, before he got his concussion, he was even playing pretty well, right? He was, at least in the first, 2 quarters, was heavily involved on third down, on long down and distance plays, right? So I think we're going to see more of this rotation, especially as Gainwell comes back, especially as Boston Scott comes back. But if nothing else, Swift is one of these players that we've dreamt about seeing 20 plus touches for. Yeah. We got that and then some last night. Super excited to see him just completely explode into week number 2.
Hopefully he can hold it together health-wise. That is a lot of carries for him. I think that is the one thing I'm a little worried about. I wouldn't be surprised if he pops up on the injury report next week. A.J. Brown in this game, though, a little underwhelming performance from him once again. 4 for 29, averaging just under 11 PPR points so far through 2 games. And he wasn't very happy with it. Obviously, he got a touchdown called back, and he was kind of on the sidelines squeaky wheeling it, if you would, Eric. So do you think I'm looking at last night as an opportunity to maybe try to go buy low on A.J. Brown? Devonta Smith has absolutely crushed it these last couple games. And while Smith is very talented in his own aspect, I think A.J. Brown still is going to be a lot of value down the stretch for everyone.
Yeah, to say the least, right? And I think the squeaky wheeling it, as you put it, is a bit misplaced, right? Like the thing that has to be contextualized here is that Jalen Hurts only completed 18 passes last night. Like this is like one of the lowest volume passing games that we've seen really since he's become the established starter, right? They're not a super high volume offense in terms of passing, but this is definitely near the end of his range. So when you put it that way, A.J. Brown's 4 receptions is like a 22% opportunity share. That is plenty fine if you extrapolate it over the course of a season. It's just the ground game really got working. That was kind of the spark that got things moving in the second half, and they stuck to it. They ran the ball an insane amount of times, 48 rushing attempts last night, right? So obviously, if you're only going to haul in 4 passes, it hurts fantasy managers. Clearly, A.J. Brown is not happy about it, but I think his role in the offense is still very well established, and he was so close to having a huge night himself, right? That turnover on the touchdown could have easily gone either way, and then a very questionable no call on a pass interference on a Caleb Evans that was clearly pass interference. Got there before the ball got there, didn't turn around to try to make a play on the ball, just smacked his arm out of the way, would have been a walk-in touchdown. Either of those two, high variance type of plays go his way. And I don't think there is a peep of concern about A.J. Brown. So definitely with you. If someone's getting a little shaky in their boots, go a low ball offer and see if you can't get him on the cheap.
All right, love it. Let's look at the Vikings side real quick before we get to everyone's start-sit questions in the chat. And it's Kirk Cousins with a big day for him, man. A lot of people, I think probably just around 50-60% of people from what I saw on ESPN formats had him in their starting lineup. So I think everyone was kind of worried primetime Kirk would once again show his face. He delivers here for fantasy managers. Congratulations. TJ Hawkinson looking like a fucking stud as well down the stretch. 7 for 66 and 2 tutties for him on the night. You're getting tight end one value right now from TJ Hawkinson. Like, he'll probably look after this week as the tight end one as far as points overall in the season. So congrats to you if you invested in him. The big question mark here, though, Eric, Alexander Mattison, 8 for 28, 3 for 11. He had one big catch kind of right there at the end, right around 2 minutes. That kind of saved his fantasy day a little bit. But man, this is not great. And this is what I think everyone has an issue with is like, yes, the opportunity has always been great for Alexander Mattison this season. It was always lining up that way. But I just don't think he's that talented of a running back. He's kind of regressed in the efficiency standpoint for the last couple of seasons now. And I think this is what happens a lot of the time. Like, it's a great role. It should be great for fantasy managers, but we're just not getting the output. And I think that's kind of what we're going to get a lot of the rest of the season.
Yeah, I guess I'm less concerned about Alexander Mattison, right? You know, his claim to fame for fantasy viability is the volume. And as this game just went completely bananas down the stretch run, they just stopped running the ball as much, right? But if you zoom out, he played 41% of snaps. That's like a 75% snap share, which is elite, right? Like Derrick Henry, who we think of as, you know, the guy, like the model of a workhorse back, he saw 67% of snaps last season, right? Christian McCaffrey last season was 74% of snaps. So his role in the offense is very well established and it's very clear. But in games where Minnesota is trailing and he's not going to get 14, 16, 18 touches, he's going to put up some stinkers, right? He's not the most efficient guy. You know, he takes a little bit of time to warm up, right? But in game scripts like this, he's going to have some bad outings. But ultimately, I mean, getting a guy that's going to have 75% of snaps week in and week out, there's still fantasy value to that. Okay.
All right. So you're not as panicked as I think I am on it. I think I'm just lower on Madison, lower on another running back that everyone's really high on this week as well. We'll touch on him here in the next segment. Let's go ahead and get into the start and sits with some matchup management.
Who you got?
Matchup management.
Who's it gonna be?
All right. And for today's edition of Matchup Management, we are joined by a fucking weapon. He is Sam Wagman. He's the content strategy and a fantasy betting and analyst over at the Game Day NFL. He's with Football Guys. So, some would say that this guy knows his stuff. I would say he absolutely knows his stuff, and he always comes with a big old smile on his face. He's the swag man, Sam Wagman. What's up, my friend?
What's going on, fellas? Thank you for having me today. It's a great day. Eagles won. Defense doesn't look good at all, but we'll get there with them once we get the guys back healthy.
There we go. Sam, you're a Philly fan, but you live in Florida. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that happen?
Well, I grew up in South Jersey, was born in Philly. I grew up in South Jersey, about 20 minutes from the city. And when I was about 10 years old, my dad decided he wanted to retire early.
Okay.
And all his friends were starting to retire. So while I was at summer camp one summer, he packed up and moved us all down to Florida. And he didn't end up retiring for nearly 15 years. So what was supposed to be a retirement move never ended up being a retirement move. And, it ended up kind of being just a slow burn for him. But, I kind of grew to like Florida. I've actually adopted the hockey team down here as my own hockey team. I'll never leave the Eagles. So, but I did leave the Philadelphia Flyers.
That is okay. That is completely respect that.
10 plus years of misery from them. So Florida's fine, and there's tons of people from the north down here, so I kind of feel you kind of meet a lot of people from the Northeast because everyone comes down here to vacation, stuff like that. So you meet a lot of people from like the Philadelphia area down here as well.
Sweet, man. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I know Eric has some ties in Phillies with his family as well. I'm out here in PA, so always good to see the Birds get a win here in week number 2. Sam, let's get to some start-sit questions. The first one I saw in the chat is from none other than Toronto Dave saying PPR start 2, Jamal Williams, James Conner, or DJ Moore. These were like just a pile of letdowns in week 1, to be honest with you. We saw a lot of volume for Jamal, a lot of volume for James Conner. With that being said, do you expect DJ Moore to bounce back, or are you rolling with 2 of these running backs here, Sam?
I'm not keeping Jamal Williams as much in my decisions this week. He looked really bad last week, and I know the matchup was kind of the issue there. You can't run against Tennessee, but yes. I think Kendre Miller is going to be back this week, and I ranked him a little bit high in my rankings this week. I'm about 20 spots higher than most of the ECR is on Kendre Miller because I really believe in his talent, and I think Jamal Williams is kind of just a guy, and I think they want to kind of shift towards Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara since Alvin Kamara gets back from the suspension after next week's game. So I would not be considering Jamal Williams here. I do think DJ Moore gets back on track, though, in this matchup. This is kind of a matchup that he's done really well against in the last couple of times that he's faced off against the Buccaneers. And I'm not as worried about the assumed shadow coverage from Carlton Davis either. I think Moore will really get going. And I think there was probably some words between him and Justin Fields after Fields missed them on a couple of easy shots last week.
Okay. Eric, where are you going here? Jamal Williams, I think that sounds like, honestly, probably the best play to me. Are you in agreement with that, to not be playing him?
Yeah, I'm right there in lockstep, right? And I think it really boils down to what happens with Kendre Miller, right? Whether or not he steps in to take a significant role is kind of in question. But if nothing else, we know that the Saints want to use a committee approach in their backfield. And with a player that is as inefficient as Jamal Williams, taking any amount of his workload away is just critical, right? So, like, he definitely poses a big risk. We'll obviously know a little bit more as we get practice reports today and more information into the weekend. But he definitely looks like the biggest, risk of the 3 that we've laid out here. And also going back to DJ Moore, even if he does see shadow coverage by Carlton Davis allowed a catch rate of 67% in his coverage last week. He allowed 2.87 yards per route covered. So basically every time that DJ Moore is running a route, he can expect to, based on this average, see more than two receiving yards. It is just astronomically high. Granted, it's a 1-game sample. So, the worst case scenario for DJ Moore is he sees that coverage, but seems like that coverage isn't as daunting as it has been in years past.
And I think at the end of the day, gentlemen, the ceiling is just not there for James Conner. It's not there for Jamal Williams. I think you have to be trudging out DJ Moore. We know what he can do. We saw it in the preseason. Hopefully it comes to fruition here in week number 2. But good on you, Dave. I think you'll be all right with James Conner and DJ Moore this week. I want to talk about some quarterback start sits here, guys. And one of the quarterbacks I featured in my column this week that I'm absolutely in on, I cannot get enough of Jared Goff this week. You look at the splits between the home and the road Jared Goff, and it kind of reminds you of like Big Ben in like the 2018, 2019 run with the Steelers, how much better he's been at home. 2.6 touchdowns last season as compared to on the road, 0.8 touchdowns. So a big difference there, a big difference in yardage. And this is a defense in Seattle that I think we can attack as fantasy managers. We know this game was a complete just back and forth battle last season, blowing the top off the defenses. So I'm all in on Jared Goff and honestly all the Lions I can get this week. Sam, any thoughts on Jared Goff or any other quarterbacks, kind of right in that QB2, QB1, back-end QB1 realm that you're interested in playing?
Yeah, I do like Jared Goff. I think this Seattle and Detroit game could possibly be the highest scoring game of the week. Taking into account last night, maybe not as high there, but still, I think this game's got a good chance to go over 50. I have Goff ranked right outside the top 10 right now. because, he's more of an efficiency guy than anything. Yeah, I could easily see him going for 250 and 3. Guys that are right on the edge of that QB1 rate. Geno Smith as well in this same matchup I really like. Also, Mac Jones is someone who kind of stands out to me. If it's a little bit early to be needing a QB streamer, but in the off chance that you do, I don't think there's anything wrong with going with the Patriots signal caller here. Yes. Miami gave up a bunch of yards, chunk plays to Justin Herbert last week. And, I've never been of the opinion that Mac Jones is a good quarterback, but I do think this Patriots offense runs a lot more seamlessly under Bill O'Brien than it did Matt Patricia. So I'll continue to keep giving Jones the benefit of the doubt. Given that I think the Patriots are going to need to throw in nearly every game this season to really keep up. So I definitely think this is a good matchup for him.
Yeah, I don't think he'll throw 54 times or whatever the number was last week, but I still think he's going to be throwing a ton to keep up with Miami and the opponents down the stretch here. So I like that call for Mac Jones there. Eric, any other quarterbacks that you're on or off here in week 2, excuse me?
Yeah, I mean, I love both those calls. And with the Mac Jones point, 54 pass attempts leads the NFL. I mean, this could set up as another game script where they're going to have to throw a ton, and that type of volume is just hard to walk away from. And the split that I think is important with Jared Goff, going back to your earlier point, is his protection rate, right? When he's got a clean pocket, when he's not being pressured, he is a completely different guy. And Seattle only applied pressure on about 20% of snaps last week. So clean pocket means good things for Goff. I'll stay right around this range. I want to talk about Anthony Richardson. He performed a bit better as a passer than I think most people anticipated in week 1, 100%. And walks into an absolutely cake matchup against the Houston Texans in week number 2. Their secondary is somewhat tough, but it looks like Petrie is probably going to miss the game with a bruised lung. That was really a turning point in their week 1 matchup against the Ravens. So definitely a bit of an upgrade in terms of his matchup. And Houston is still a turnstile against the run. We saw 10 rushing attempts for Anthony Richardson. If he didn't get dinged up on that last drive, presumably would have been involved in the touchdown that came off of that drive as well. So definitely like his involvement in the ground game as a floor. And I think he can actually do a little bit in the air this week against the Texans.
When it comes to sits at the quarterback position as well, I want to throw out Dak Prescott. I think, honestly, we're getting close to the point, boys, where I'm like almost comfortable dropping Dak Prescott in one quarterback leagues just because I really think this is a great Cowboys team. But right now, I think they want to win with defense and a good run game. We kind of heard Mike McCarthy. He doesn't care that too much that they air it out here. So against a really stout New York Jets secondary and defense as a whole that made Josh Allen look like a Division II college quarterback in week number 1. I think I'm out on Dak Prescott here. Sam, any thoughts on Dak here in week 2 or moving forward down the line?
Yeah, I got a ton. I mean, this is one of the rare instances where we kind of have to listen to what the coach told us. And McCarthy told us when he got rid of Kellen Moore, like, we don't run the ball enough. And that's despite the fact that I think they were the 5th highest run rate team last year. They really want to run the ball. They don't technically have the personnel to really run the ball a ton,
right?
Just really with Tony Pollard, but it does seem that they want to have a committee running approach, and it just seems that they're going to do it. And I don't think this is the matchup to really trot Dak out there if you don't have to against the Jets team that really did lock down Josh Allen last week. They took what Allen gave them, had some picks. And I do think they're one of the most dangerous secondaries in the league. So I'm not sure we're going to see Dak do a lot. And I've never really been the believer in Dak as it is. The fact that Brandon Cooks is a sprained MCL and probably won't play in this game doesn't help.
Yeah, 100%. He's going to have to rely a lot on Jake Ferguson and a lot on Michael Gallup. We'll see if they can hold up. Let's go to running back start sits here, Eric. And there are some really interesting names out there this week. We saw a lot of rookies pop, a lot of second-year guys pop that we weren't really expecting. One of my favorite starts this week is Tyler Algier. However, we just got the news that Cordell Patterson is probably good to go in this one as well. Any thoughts if you're backing Algier or any of these other, right on the borderline start sits for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely comfortable going back to the well with Tyler Algier, right? This is going to continue to be a committee backfield, and I know that Bijan Robinson managers are probably a little unhappy hearing that, but
Yeah.
the presumed return of Cordell Patterson, I actually don't think impacts Tyler Algier at all, right? Like if you go back and you watch that Week 1 tape with Atlanta facing off against the Panthers, Bijan Robinson was kind of in Cordell Patterson's role. Like that's the way that they used Patterson the last few years, very much so how they deployed Robinson in Week 1. So to your specific question, I don't think the presence of Patterson really has anything to do with how, the opportunity that Tyler Algier has. And much like Philadelphia last night, Atlanta is one of the highest run volume offenses in the entire NFL. So having two guys out there is never the funnest thing to see from a fantasy perspective, but there's plenty of opportunity to go around. I definitely think Algier is a comfortable flex start this week.
Well, we know they're not going to pass the ball, especially with Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas on the other side of it for the Packers. I think Tyler Algier is a smash start here. Anyone else you like on the fringe to their starter sit, Sam?
Yeah, I was tossing around my rankings. I think a lot of people are down on Rachaad White this week after watching him.
Been down on him the whole time, buddy.
Yeah, well, I got back in on him.
Okay.
This is the matchup that I really like for White. And I wrote about it in my Week 2 matchups to exploit piece for the game day this week. Really, really liking this match against the Bears defensive line. This is a Chicago defense that was just absolutely obliterated through the air by Aaron Jones and the Packers in Week 1. And I really don't know if Chicago can stop anybody. Like I'm truly, truly concerned that their defense just can't stop anybody.
Yep.
We know Rachaad White is a receiving threat. We also know he's a volume threat. He had 19 total touches last week, and they ranked 10th most among running backs last week. Yeah. There's no evidence that Sean Tucker is going to take over this backfield anytime soon. And there's really nobody else. So we can only assume that Rachaad White is going to see some nice volume again. I do think that the wide receivers are going to see quite a lot of work as well. I like their matchup as well. But I don't see any reason why Rachaad White can't be the beneficiary of volume. Kind of the argument we've had for Alexander Mattison all these years, despite the fact that he's clearly just not good at football. Rachaad White doesn't have to be good at football to get a lot of volume and be semi efficient, sink into the end zone. I think he does that this week.
I like that call, Sam. As I said, I'm not a Rachaad White guy, but Rachaad White against the Bears, really, I'll take anyone against the Bears at this point. So, yeah, sign me up there. Running backs on the sit list for me this week, boys. It starts with the guy on the thumbnail today. It's Joshua Kelley. I don't care if Austin Eckler goes. I'm not throwing out Josh Kelley. I really do not. Like, he had a career week in Week 1, but that's all it was, I think, is like a career game here. This is a player, like, I don't think you can always stick decent to mid-level NFL players in a great role and expect good results. Like, he's averaged 3.6 yards per carry throughout his career. I just don't see it here, especially going up against what's a really, really good run defense in Tennessee, man. Like, this is not a fluke with the Titans. They've been a top 3 run defense against the position for the last 2 seasons. They were number 1 last week as well. So I don't want anything to do with Jeffrey Simmons and the boys up front here. I just think they're going to have to pass the ball more without Eckler, and they know that. So I think it's a shift in game plan rather than a shift of opportunity to another player here. How do you feel about it, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, that defensive front for Tennessee is no joke, right? So obviously there's potential opportunity available to Joshua Kelley, given the injury for Austin Eckler. But, running against this front, even a run heavy sort of game plan, probably not going to bear a whole lot of fruit, right? That's a lot of what the Saints did last week, and still only allowed the Titans still only allowed 7.7 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, right? So yards per carry, down below 3. Like, this is just a real tough one, and you add on top of that the way he's going to be utilized is somewhat in question. I know people, rushed out to the wire to get him, and I think that was a good ad on the whole, but I don't think you fire him up immediately.
Yeah, and Sam, I saw like people spending 50-60% of their fab on Joshua Kelley to fire him up this week. And I hate to say, I don't think that's a great idea. Any thought on Kelley or anyone else here that you would be sitting at the running back position?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I'm kind of intrigued by Kelly. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if I'm completely out on him. I'm not gonna fire him up in season-long managed leagues. I might throw a couple darts in DFS leagues and some best ball weekly best ball tournament spots. But because I do think there is a little bit of spike potential with how good this offense is. He did run 38% of the routes last week, and he'll clearly get some more usage this week through the air. The Titans defense doesn't exactly extend to, all the success through the air against running backs as much as they do on the ground. So there is some hope there. I do think a volume approach could help for him. Look, we got Jamal Williams against this defense last week. He's washed me. Kelly is not washed, and I do think the Chargers want to run the ball. I think that's probably something that went really under the radar for them last year. I do think that they want to run the ball. I do think they'll get Kelly involved. He played 50% of the long down and distance snaps last week as well. So we could see him get a little bit involved through the passing game. One guy on the sit list for me this week that I'm really not at all a fan of is David Montgomery. And I'm, this is more a play. This is more a play at loving Jahmyr Gibbs and thinking that we see Montgomery as more of just who he is as the season goes along. But I do think this is a really great chance for the Lions coaching staff to come out here and say, look, we worked the guy in small last week. We got him 9 touches. He looked really, really electric. Now here's a matchup where we can just let him loose, let him be explosive against a defense that has been really bad against running backs, especially through the air over the last couple seasons. And I think David Montgomery gets relegated more to a between the tackles role here. So I went ahead and knocked David Montgomery down to 26th in my rankings this week. It's not the largest drop, but I moved Jahmyr Gibbs up to 11th in my rankings this week because I think that we start to see Gibbs really have an explosive couple weeks here, and it starts against Seattle. So this is not as much a fade of Montgomery for his matchup. It's a fade at where I expect him to get the more touches this week.
All right. I love it, man. I love the call. Corey in the chat saying, swag, let these boys know.
Corey.
LFG. Appreciate you, Corey. And then we got Michael saying, advice on a PPR RB start, Mostert, Robinson, or Kyron Williams, Brian Robinson Jr., that is. Swag, where are we going here, man? Where are we going? Corey's needs the energy from you, and Michael needs the advice.
It depends if Mostert plays. If Mostert plays, I would go with him because he's honestly just the best option. Because Robinson's got a really tough matchup against Denver. Yep. Kyron Williams will have a really tough matchup against San Francisco. New England's not the easiest matchup at all. I'd like to go elsewhere between any of these three guys if possible. But if Mostert starts, he would probably be my guy here.
Okay, Eric, how do you feel about it? I agree with Sam, man. I don't love any of these situations right now. We think Robinson has the role locked up, but it's a really, really tough matchup out there.
It is a tough matchup, and I think that we're going to see the Commanders' backfield kind of ping pong a bit based on the game script that they're in, right? So, week 1 it looked like the role was his, but I think that is subject to change just based on how each individual game unfolds. I'm gonna sweep it with the two of you and go with Raheem Mostert, right? Assuming that he plays, he very much so has the largest role of the three people that we've talked about here. 72% snap share last week. We already stumped for Alexander Mattison seeing about 3/4 of snaps earlier, so I won't belabor that point. But that type of opportunity is elite. It's kind of a middle of the road matchup against New England, which is better than it has been in years past. And if he's going to be on the field that often in arguably the most, if not one of the most high caliber offenses in the entire NFL, it's Mostert for me out of these three.
Awesome. Well, guys, keep the questions coming. We'll get to some more in our next segment. That's just around the corner with our other great guest that's going to be on the line with us. But Sam, let's get you out of here. What do you have going on that the IBT family and everyone in the chat today can support you with for the rest of the season, my man?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Swagman95. And everything's over at the game day this season. Got a ton of great stuff over there. My weekly articles on matchups to exploit and all the futures updates we have over there, plus our weekly Twitter shows, Twitter spaces over there, start sits on Sunday mornings, waiver shows on Tuesday nights. It's absolutely a blast. Got a ton of content there this season.
Awesome. Well, Sam, enjoy it. Enjoy the nice Florida weather down there as well, my friend. And
it's sunny and beautiful.
There we go. Today was the first day I had to wear pants in like forever, like long pants. So yeah, so it is fall up here, my friend. You enjoy the yeah. You guys enjoy the heat down there, and we'll catch you next time here, Sam. And guys, let's go ahead and get into some sure things sleepers of the week.
It's the sure thing. Sleepers of the week.
All right, here we go, guys. We are in Sure Things Sleepers of the Week, and we are joined by a new friend of the show today. His name is Brian Ford. He is the host of Dynasty Fever Pod, and he's at Going for Two as well. What's up, Brian? How are we doing today on this Feel Good Friday?
Not too bad. Wearing pants, so if I get up, it's okay. You'll have to explain the shore part of this. As a Jersey guy, I'm wondering where that part comes from.
Yeah. So honestly, like I just kind of want to do like a pun on the word sure and make it sure. Because it's always summertime, baby. And listen, I know a lot of people give shit on the Jersey Shore. I'm from Pennsylvania. I fucking love the Jersey Shore. Nothing's better than some Wildwood, some Atlantic City, baby.
I mean, I hate it. So like, yeah.
What part of Jersey are you in, my brother?
So I'm in Essex County, a town called Montclair, a couple towns outside Newark. I grew up in a little more central Jersey, but still north in Union County, a town called Scotch Plains. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today, man. We appreciate it greatly. And before we get some Sure Things Sleepers of the Week, we do have some questions here in the chat to get to, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure.
All right, here we go. We got Trey. Afternoon, gents. Afternoon, Trey. Thanks for tuning in, man. Full PPR. Start 2. Garrett Wilson, Michael Pittman, Elijah Moore, Rashad White, Javonte Williams, or James Cook. Thanks and good luck this week. Some loaded options here. How do we feel about this, Brian?
Wow. You hit me first, didn't you? I'm still kind of processing all these names. I'm going to say that Garrett Wilson, despite the putrid quarterback, he's in a negative game script.
Yes.
And he's the most talented guy on that list. It's hard to sit him, even against Dallas, although if you think, which he probably will be, Zach Wilson will be running for his life.
Yeah.
Then I would maybe pivot off that and go with Pittman, who I've said all offseason is getting too much shade for having a mobile quarterback, and he'll be fine because RPO offenses concentrate targets in their alphas, and so I think Pittman will be fine. And it's a likely negative game script with I think a close spread for last I checked. And then probably between James Cook and Elijah Moore as the second person. Yeah, just kind of off the top of my head there.
Okay, Eric, how do you feel about it? I kind of like Garrett Wilson down in Dallas just because I feel like Zach Wilson could extend some plays. We could see Garrett Wilson get past Trayvon Diggs as Diggs as known to get burned. How do you feel about him, Pittman? I think those are great starts, but Javonte Williams, man, took a ton of touches in his first game back for Denver last week.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm right there with the two of you. I'll split the difference. I'll be the tiebreaker. I would still go Garrett Wilson here. Obviously, the matchup is atrocious. Clearly, it's a downgrade at quarterback. But I think with a week of practice and the ability for Hackett to install some things that Zach Wilson is more comfortable with, we will see a little bit more out of this passing game, and the talent is just unreal. The thing that put me over the top is exactly what you mentioned. Obviously, Diggs is an all-world corner, but he does have a bit of a history of getting beat, right? Going after the ball, biting on the double move. Obviously, Wilson's the type of player that can exploit that. Granted, it is an upside play, and then I'm right there with Brian. The name that jumped off for me is James Cook, right? The role in this offense is exactly what I was projecting it to be over the course of the offseason. It's definitely a lot to be excited about, and I think we see the Bills bounce back in a big way this week.
All right. Love it, boys. Here's one from Juju God. Start Harris or Tyler Algier. I'm guessing this is Damian Harris. Is that what you're thinking, Eric?
I'm thinking it might be Najee Harris.
Oh, wow. Geez.
If that's the case, oh God, I've got Harris higher on rankings. I trust in my rankings a lot, so that is usually how I make my start and sit decisions. But I am very concerned about Najee Harris this week. We talked about it a little bit with Jamal Williams earlier. These high volume, inefficient type of players, if their volume is in jeopardy, then their viability is very much so in jeopardy. So I'm willing to give it another go here, and I'll still fire up Najee Harris, but his matchup is incredibly difficult this week, and we saw him cede a ton of work last week. He only has a 42% opportunity share. So if that trend holds, like, there's going to be a point where we are readily selecting Tyler Algier over Najee Harris head to head. But at least for this week, I'm willing to consider the small sample size, and I'll go back to Najee.
This is the ultimate test for me, man. I've been a Najee loyalist for a long time. But Tyler Algier is my start of the week at the running back position here. I love what he did in week one, handled 56% of the snaps, actually is leading Atlanta in red zone touches with 4 right now as well. I mentioned earlier in the show, I don't expect a lot of passing out of the Falcons this week, going up against a great secondary and great defense in Green Bay. So, oh man. I think I'm going to go Algier here. Brian, can you split the difference from us? And man, that just hurt my soul to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Najee's the safer play for sure. And I probably, if I was doing weekly rankings, despite the matchup, would have him slightly ahead. The thing about Algier is I think his usage will go down. It's gonna even out over the next few weeks as I think Bijan gets broken in more. And listen, Arthur Smith is Arthur Smith. Like he's gonna make Cordarrelle Patterson a thing too,
That's the question. That's
right,
what I'm worried about now.
And I think if you come from the perspective of, listen, I'm going to use Algier now while CPAT is just coming back and Bijan's still breaking in, and they still don't trust Ritter to even make pre-snap reads or whatever, then you use Algier. If you go from the perspective of, I want probably a safer path to volume with the higher ranked guy, despite the matchup, because we expect Algier's usage to go down, then you go Najee. I mean, I don't know. It's more of a commentary on how Najee has fallen, I think, than anything else. But I'd probably play it safe early in the year and go Najee. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Juju, they're going Najee. So we will tell you Najee here. But I still would maybe try to find a way to get Algier in your lineup if possible. And he's also saying in the chat, y'all real as fuck, got a sub from me. Hey, we appreciate that, man. Like that's what we try to do here, bro. That's literally like what we try to be, is just authentic as we can be. And he's also wondering here, Waller or Hurst. Oh man, Monday night, Hayden Hurst. The Saints, they allowed the least points last week to opposing tight ends. It was just one game. But Chig got blanked in that one. Ryan Tannehill was running for his life for most of it. So it's hard for me to want to get behind Hurst, but Waller has this nagging injury, Eric. Like that scares the shit out of me. I mean, how do we just find out about this after drafts happen,
Yeah, it's because it wasn't really all that nagging. It's probably something that is either new or recently flared up, because Darren Waller has a bit of an injury history, right? He seems to be nicked up basically every time that we're talking about him in the fantasy context. Even with that being the case, there's reporting out there from himself, directly from the source, saying that he's going to be out there playing. With that being the the presumed reality. Still going Waller here, right? Tough matchup. Don't want to have to wait for Monday night for Hayden Hurst. And look, even hobbled, I think you can kind of get replacement level productivity out of Waller, and clearly has the upside to be one of the top 3 or 5 options at the position this week.
Brian, how are we feeling, man? How are we feeling? Are you rolling with the hobbled Waller, or do you want the upside with Hurst?
I'll go with Waller. I think you can kind of pretty much toss out last week's game, when it comes to the Giants and Dallas. 83% route participation from Waller. You want to see your tight ends 80% plus, and that might have been even more because they kind of pulled him when the game was out of control. But he still was first on the team in targets, and Arizona is a cake matchup or historically has been a cake matchup for tight ends, and was in 2022 for sure. And I don't know necessarily that you have to really lean on, positive game script. They're just going to pound the rock with Saquon. When we talk about positive game script and run first and all that, it's in context because the NFL now, even a run first team, passes a majority of the time. It's the 2023 NFL. So, I mean, and if he takes, if he gets one of those on like a target from inside the 10 and gets a touchdown, there you go. You're good.
All right. Appreciate the insight there. Appreciate all the questions from Juju and Trey. And let's go ahead. Let's get into the sure thing sleepers of the week here. Eric, I want to start with you, man. We need some redeemers because last week's were shit. So let's get the streak started right now. What do you got for us, my friend?
Yeah, if nothing else, much higher likelihood that my sleeper this week actually suits up and plays relative to throwing a deep dart on Devon A-Chain last week. But for me, the deeper option that I'm going to is Rashid Shaheed. Played very well in that week 1 game. He clearly has an established role in this offense. But really, the thing for me is his matchup, right? Obviously, figuring out what to do about J.C. Horn on the outside has been the question for players going up against the Carolina Panthers in the last few years. That is no longer a concern, right? J.C. Horn, another player that is down with a hamstring injury. He's going to be out in this game. When he left last week's game, in entered C.J. Henderson, a cornerback that we have been picking on seemingly for his entire career, primarily with Jacksonville. And when he came into the game, he saw 2 targets thrown in his coverage. He gave up 2 catches for 45 yards. So when you talk about an outside cornerback, this is someone that this is a position where, letting more than 15, 17 yards per catch get past you is relatively high. To be north of 20 is insane. And specifically the way that they use Shaheed in the New Orleans offense, he lines up in the slot the least out of all of the 3 starting wide receivers. Wow. CJ Henderson didn't play a single slot snap last week. And Rashid Shaheed, 3rd in the league in average depth of target. So he is that field stretching option. I love how this sets up for his matchup against Henderson.
Yeah, Rashid Shaheed, baby. He's feeling 22.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was sweet, though, to see 22 burning down the sideline like that.
Yeah.
I would love to play Rashid Shaheed this week. I have some leagues that I tried to acquire him, and people were unloading about 8-9% of fab at times for him. I was like, oh, my God, I underestimated how much Shaheed love there is. Want to circle back with you, Brian. Who is your sure thing sleeper in your inaugural pick here at the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much you announced your intended guest, but I don't know if there's a farther descent down the fantasy football ladder than from who was supposed to be here and me. But I will do my best. So on the show sheet, it looked like both of you were going to pick wide receivers. So I said, what the heck, I'll go with a running back. Tyjae Spears is Fantasy Pros ECR, 49 in PPR and 50 in half PPR. I probably like it a little better as a PPR play than a half PPR play, but still, I think it is not a bad play. Led the team in snap percentage and led, I believe, running backs in route participation, 61 and 41%, I think, something like that. I expect that to probably come down a little, but what I don't expect to change is that the Tennessee is in the mode where we've got a guy finally good enough where we can spell Henry
Yes.
a little bit more early in the
Yes.
season and save him for when it's like December and we want to run it down people's throats. And if they're making a run for the playoffs, right? Like he might even be traded by then, right? And so, when we look at the matchup with the Chargers, I think it's kind of a sneaky game. It's got a game total of 45 the last I checked.
Okay.
A lot of that's coming from the Chargers side, but I think it's going to be a sneaky game for DFS and for and for Managed Fantasy Weekly. I think Chargers have been there's two ways really to get the 10 points plus from Spears and maybe even combined, right? Like on the one hand, the Chargers are traditionally a run funnel under Staley, and will let you run and maybe dink and dunk a little bit while they're trying to protect against deeper passes. So there's the run path to some points, but also there's the negative game script, perhaps weaker armed Ryan Tannehill. Than we've seen it in the past. So we're maybe looking at some short passes to, so there's kind of like a couple different ways that Spears can grab you those points. And I mean, again, just like I said with Waller, you find one and get in the end zone once, like you're more than halfway to the 10 points requirement for this segment. So I love Tyjae Spears, use him while he's still okay and the arthritic knees or whatever aren't given out. And so he's my sleeper pick for the week. Yeah.
All right, man. I love that. I love that play, dude. Honestly, Tyjae Spears is someone who I think has been fantastic. So let's go ahead and let's get to my sleeper pick here. It is Josh Reynolds. Listen, man, I am cracking down on the wide receiver 2 for Jared Goff. I already talked about why I love this game so much. It was a huge back and forth shootout last season. Josh Reynolds is the wide receiver 2 for the Lions, ran 70% of snaps last Thursday, second in target share. Marvin Jones did nothing to help himself in this Lions offense last game with a couple of drops. I think right now, if you're looking for an upside play, it's against the Seahawks here, who let Puka Nacua look like Cooper Kupp last week. Like they have some question marks back there in this Seattle secondary. So I think Josh Reynolds is someone I'm trying to pick on some of those rookies with. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to let Brian and Eric out of here. I know that they have some other obligations here for the rest of the afternoon. So Brian, tell us where we can support you, and I'm going to get to the rest of the questions we have coming here in the chat.
Sure. At FFJunkie_ on Twitter, I do Dynasty Fever podcast, which is audio only, kind of midweek. Usually like Thursdays episodes will drop. That's at Dynasty Fever Pod. You mentioned Going for Two. I got articles and rankings up on goingfor2.com. And through the Going for Two family, I do a live podcast on Saturday nights called Dynasty Saturday Night 5. We do like lists of 5 as a way to talk about Dynasty. That's 7:30 Eastern on the Going for Two live YouTube channel. This week, we're going to be unpacking running backs with Jacob Sanderson as a guest, which we don't often have guests. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, check out Brian. Brian, we can't thank you enough for joining us short notice today. After our guest did unfortunately have to cancel on us, but you did a great job filling in for him. So guys, check out Brian on Twitter. Really good follow as well. And Brian, have a good rest of your day here, man. Thank you.
Right on. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, Eric, you're stuck here with me for the next couple minutes as we answer some questions. Let's go ahead and get to Juju's. Kendrick Bourne or Michael Thomas? Fuck, man, that is a tough one because I love Kendrick Bourne this week going against Miami. That kind of bled a lot of points to the Chargers last week. How do you feel about this one? Michael Thomas, though, it's like if he's healthy, you kind of have to play him, right?
Yeah, that's kind of been my position on most Michael Thomas involved start-sit questions, right? Like the clock is ticking ever louder on when we will not have Michael Thomas. So if you have him, this is your opportunity to fire him up. But also, much like Shaheed, he stands to benefit from this Cottonelle soft secondary matchup against the Panthers. So I'll go Thomas here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Kendrick Bourne. I would still maybe try to find a way to get him in your lineup, Juju, depending on what the rest of the lineup looks like. Here we got Philly Mike, Joshua Dobbs, Jimmy G, Bryce Young, pick 2 for a super flex. Aaron Rodgers out for the season. Oh, I'm sorry, brother. That is tough. You can also get Zach Wilson, the young MILF Slayer, off of waivers here, Eric. Holy cow. I would say Jimmy G and Bryce Young. I don't want to play Zach Wilson against the Cowboys. I'd still rather have Wilson, I think, long-term rather than Dobbs. So I would pick up Wilson. I don't want Josh Dobbs, who scored 1 fantasy point last week. Might not be the quarterback that much longer there. So yeah, but Jimmy G and Bryce Young, easy 2 for me for Superflex.
Yeah, those are the 2 for me as well. And I would absolutely go out and add Zach Wilson. Every starting quarterback has value in Superflex.
Yes.
And I think he will very likely be the starter for the stretch run for the Jets.
Yep, I'm with you there. Also asking here from Mike, should I trade Devontae Adams for Anthony Richardson straight up? I really need a quarterback for the Superflex. I don't know what else to do. I would ask who your other receivers are, Mike. If you can ask us in the chat, let us know who your other receivers are. I think that gives us a little more context around it. When we're looking at value in a Superflex league right now, though, I honestly think I'd rather have Anthony Richardson. If I'm going to be straight up with you, Eric, like I think Anthony Richardson is, I mean, dude, he's a top 10 quarterback rest of the season for me. He was a top 10 quarterback coming into the season for me. We saw it in week 1. Devontae Adams, there's a lot of question marks there, man. Jimmy Garoppolo looked pretty decent in his Raiders debut, but Jacoby Myers seemed to be his favorite target. And it feels like Jimmy G's never been someone who's kind of like fell to the ground and kneeled at a wide receiver who wanted his targets. So I think I would really consider this. Maybe see if you can move Josh Dobbs with him, get something else back with Anthony Richardson, maybe a bench wide receiver or something. Eric, your thoughts?
Yeah, assuming that it doesn't absolutely destroy your wide receiver room, right? Like as long as you didn't go like bully running back on your draft strategy and you've got some viable options at wide
Devonta
receiver.
Smith, Brandon Ayuk, Christian Watson, Dotson, Nico, Josh, right? He's good.
Smell you later, Devontae Adams. This is absolutely the Richardson side.
Yeah. Great question, man. I think that's a really good one. Get Devonta Smith can be your wide receiver 1. You're good there. He's also asking here, flex question from, all right, let me see if I can pull up the original one. Can't find the original one here for you, but we'll answer here. Zay Jones, Nico Collins, Rashad White for the flex. You're the Rashad White guy, Eric. Where do you lean here?
I will never take that mantle from Scott Rainier, but I did like him a fair amount in the preseason, and I like him here as the flex option overall. Right, generally speaking, I go workhorse running backs where I can in the flex. It's just a safer projection. But let's not bury the lead that Nico Collins from my beloved Houston Texans leads the entire NFL in air yard share. When they are throwing the ball down the field, they are going his way. He also leads the team in target share and in target opportunity, targets per route run. So definitely going to be a healthy dose of Nico Collins, but this is a volatile Texans offense. So I'll go with the safer pick, which in my mind is Rashid White.
Yeah, I hate to, man. I think it is Nico and Rashad here for me. I don't think Zay Jones is going to do it 2 weeks in a row. While I do love the matchup, he is probably going to see the number 1 cornerback a lot of the times for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I would probably have to go with Rashad White, even though I don't love it. It is kind of a cake matchup here. Sam pointed that out earlier in the program. So great question there. We got one from Fernando. Can only start one. Mostert, Brian Robinson, Javonte Williams, can't decide. Ooh, I think I'd have to go Javonte Williams here. We've seen the role, like he's going to have 15 touches at least here for me. It's against the Commanders, which little better front. Samaje P. Ryan, I think, still going to take some of that pass catching work. But Brian Robinson, I don't want him on the other side of this. I'm more scared of the Broncos front than the Commanders at this present time without Chase Young. And Raheem Mostert, I don't know how much we're going to throw in this one. I don't know how much Raheem Mostert is going to be healthy. Eric, any indecision from you?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, if Mostert is scratched, obviously that is one less decision to make. It's definitely between Mostert and Javonte Williams. I actually have them neck and neck. They're right next to each other on my rankings. For me, if Mostert goes, I'll lean that way, right? 72% snap share is nothing to sneeze at, but Javonte Williams should see plenty of work when it's all said and done as well.
All right, Chris asking, would you trade Dak for Daniel Jones because he has rushing upside? I have Waller as well. Oh man, I guess Chris, if you're still with us, I would ask maybe, is this a super flex? Is this a 1 QB? I think either way. I do think Daniel Jones has more upside this year. I'm just worried that Dak might be limited, man, with how good that defense is, and what McCarthy said he wants to do is what he seems like he wants to do. Or is it too early to tell with just that weird 1 game sample size for both these quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think it's that, right? Like the 1 game sample size should not dictate our point of view on really any sort of season long outlook, right? Like I think Carson Wentz was like the QB 2 or 3 after 1 week last year, right? So like tiny sample size, we can't overreact to it. But if nothing else, these guys are kind of a wash in my rest of season rankings. I do like the rushing upside for Daniel Jones, but you mentioned you have Waller as well. Don't exactly want to be that exposed to the Giants offense in a season long context, right? Stacking is not nearly as optimal in a managed season long league as it is in DFS and best ball. So would probably stand pat with Dak just because I want to have a more even distribution and try to navigate the variance waters that way. I think we got you on mute, Seth.
Last question here before we get out of here, guys. But if you guys do have some more, just put them in the comments of this video and we'll work back throughout the afternoon and early tomorrow and get those answered for you. We appreciate all the questions today. It's a lot of fun to answer them for you guys. We got Gibbs versus Seattle or Travis Etienne versus Kansas City. You can't sit Travis Etienne, not after what he did. He's going to get 20 plus touches. He had a career day in receptions on Sunday as well. And they're going to need him versus Kansas City, man. When they need a player, it's usually Travis Etienne. So I would 100% I like Gibbs versus Seattle. We touched on him earlier. I think Sam was really high on him. So I think they're both great plays. Can you or was it you, Eric? Were you high on Gibbs? Someone was.
No, it was Sam. And shout out to Sam, like coming on and dropping the hammer. He said he had him as running back 11 in his rankings. Like, look, dude, bold strategy. We'll see how it plays out for you, but like fortune favors the bold. I'm not mad at that call, but practically speaking, there's no way that it can't be Travis Etienne, right? Like his role in this offense, there were some concerns about it over the course of the offseason. Those have, largely dissipated. Obviously, we saw Tank Bigsby get the vulture touchdown, but even that set aside, 80% snap share for Travis Etienne in that first game, and top 5 in the league in snaps on long downs and distance. So he has got a stranglehold on the pass catching work. This is probably going to be a game where there's going to be a lot of hurry up. There's going to be a lot of third down, long down and distance that the Jaguars are going to have to navigate against the Kansas City Chiefs. So love how this week sets up for Travis Etienne.
Get both of them in your lineup if you can, Mike.
Yeah, do both.
If not, Travis Etienne is going to smash. Guys, thank you so much for all the questions, all the interaction in the chat from new faces, from familiar faces. Come back, hang out with us again, subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, tell your friends if you enjoy it. It's that small stuff here at the IBT family that really, really helps us continue to grow and have more time to bring you guys great content. So enjoy the rest of your weekend here. Good luck in week 2. And we'll be back on Tuesday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time for our waiver wire and in the Scope show. Take care, guys, and keep it in between.